right, here we go. Go Jew Nation. Don't stop, you ain't gotta stop. Baby, do your thing. Don't stop. If you think it up, rock with me. Get on top. You can take it all. Oh, oh, oh. Actually, one of my favorite up tempos that is unsung official two-step jump off. For those that have known me for a while, they know that's one of my songs that definitely gets me motivated. Uh, my ODB and my Wu Tang Clan, as Vanessa, she definitely was there when that happened. And also, Inspector Deck, Baby says Teresa was there for that as well too. She knows. So if that song comes on, we both jump up and start doing our dance. How you doing, Goju Nation? It's been half a minute. I've taken half a minute. But like I said, when I come and do these things, I want to make sure that it's something that you're going to walk away with and say, that was worth my time. And I'm not just, regurgitating certain things that are happening out there. There's another place you can go for that. But I want to make sure you come here, you can say, you know what? When I heard this, that's not something I was thinking about. And actually, my man Spence, he reminded me of that yesterday. Because he actually asked me out loud. He called me out. He said, yo, what's going on with the podcast? What's going on? Right? And he literally said, what I like about what you do is that I don't hear what everybody else does. So I said, you know what? Let me just stay motivated and stay grinding and make this thing happen. So here we are, Goju Nation. Industry Rule, number 4080, the audio version. This is Tally. You know what you get when you get me by myself. You get something that's qualified, something that's verified, and something that's certified. And that's what I'm here to bring you today. A little bit of what you, not what you're used to, but a little bit what you kind of hear from me. And I got a couple things today that's definitely going to be, I don't want to say different, but it's going to be a little bit of a left turn. I like to take these left turns. So, should we get right into it? Okay, let's get into it. Let's start with something that y'all used to from me. Let's start with the cute. That's the qualified part of it, man. I've taken this summer to kind of just listen and not so much like activate, kind of like just what comes to me and see what kind of has me listening to things and saying, this is good, this is nice, this is good to hear, and stuff like that. And then bring it back to you so you can have someone qualified to listen to. I got a friend of mine who likes to complain about what isn't going on and how the music's not the same and stuff isn't good. And to be honest with you, part of the problem of why that individual doesn't like what's being listened to because he's not listening to everything. He's looking for the great stuff to appear his front door. Whereas if you want to find good music, today's day and age, you got to go seek that out. It's there. It's very not hard to find. You just have to seek it out more so than assume it's going to just plop and land at your front door. So the first thing I want to talk about is a hip hop artist, and she's already out there. She's been doing her thing, and if you listen to me on the last couple of podcasts, I've given the hints because girls is players too. Coi Leray, her album is very, very, very good. Very good. The very first thing you hear when her album comes on is a Hall & Oates sample of Rich Girl. Do your Google research on that, okay? Hall & Oates is probably one of the best blue-eyed soul bands from the 70s going into the 80s. And that gives you an indication of where her head is at because she's young. You know right away as soon as you hear a Hall & Oates sample that she grew up in a musical household or a hip-hop household. So these two things you find out right away. I just said it. She grew up in a hip-hop household. And because of that, there's a respect that she has for the music that's inherently understood throughout the album. And in this 50th year or anniversary of hip-hop, especially for this now generation, that's necessary and appreciated. So that way, they're not just hearing what's out today. They're hearing what's been done with the respect of what is going on right now. So Coi Leray did a great job of that. All right. She used Pump Up the Jam. David Guetta produced Make My Day, which is a good record. The original Players uses The Message by Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. The remix uses Put Your Hands on My Eyes Can See. by Busta Rhymes. And then what she really does that makes you say she's really paying attention, or her team is, or somebody in that camp is that she samples "It's My Party" by Leslie Gore. Yes, it's my party and I do what I want to. Singing sounds crazy, but you know that song when I say that. And ironically, for those that are historians, that was songs produced by Quincy Jones in 1963. Okay, when he was angling for record labels at that point in time. So she's done her definite historical pay attention to what history represents, and then just when you think she's doing too much of that, she does things that are very much what's happening right now with bops and also get loud. So she successfully knows that. But and then the last one, which shows her creativity, okay, which also in the sample, is she sampled James Brown "It's a Man's World," and she absolutely flips it concept wise. So I'm mentioning a lot of what the samples were that may speak to an old school way for this generation of kind of what things are done, but the album is definitely beyond well balanced. Beyond well balanced. What you're hearing today, she does enough of and a lot of as well, and she's very much on top of it. I've seen her show a couple times too. She's very, very animated and activated, can dance her behind off, and does that as well too. I also saw her at the BET Awards when she did the tribute for Busta Rhymes. I don't know if you saw her outfit, but her outfit had patches of every single female rapper past and present that was out to show an homage to the craft as well too. So she gets it, Goju Nation. She absolutely gets it. Okay. And something else to respect as well. She's very articulate with her flow and her lyrics. Her ad-libbing is done very creatively and has a grasp of what a good chorus contains. Her subject matter is diverse. Lyrically, she stays on topic and doesn't, go off on tangents. And it's magnificent balance of what is today and respectful and gracefully what was in the past as far as hip hop goes. I absolutely, as I ponder this album takes Coi Leray from somewhere in the middle of the line to the front of the line when it comes to hip hop artists, especially female hip hop artists. Let's just say hip hop artists, because she gets it on 10. So look at her as what are we saying now? Lotto, I like Lotto. Coi Leray. If you want to say Cardi is Cardi and Nicki a quote at the head of the class, I'm just saying that Coi Leray's right there with them on this project. Okay, the album is called Coi, Coi, as far as her first name, and just revisionist history if you didn't know, she's Benzino's daughter. Benzino, who was the co-owner of the Source magazine and also had a rap career as well too. So that may be where her respect for the game comes into play. Coi Leray album, absolutely, positively worth the purchase in time. Second project that popped up on my radar this summer, which is actually very, very good. She's gotten past her major breakup and her emotional I'll call it trauma that she experienced when she broke up with her producer boyfriend at that point in time. But Summer Walker has dropped a EP this summer called Clear 2, as in the Clear number 2, that there was Clear and now there's Clear 2. And she has absolutely landed very comfortably into what she will be doing music wise. When I listen to her last two albums, I can hear that she was trying to be very R&B. She was trying to be what she felt that the industry would want to hear from her, but she has landed with this project more so with what her sound is and what it will be moving forward. Very refreshing when you hear an artist comfortable in their skin making good music the way that they want to make it, and that's what you hear on this album. Very good listen. Very, very, very good listen, Summer Walker. First song starts off with J. Cole. And J. Cole actually breaks down the timeline of what she's been through in the past few years and congratulates her on coming through it and being okay after such. Okay, the aftermath of such. And that sets the tone for the project. It's an EP, 30 minutes of your time, beyond worth it. And if you've seen some of the other podcasts, I've been critical of Summer Walker. So for me to be at this place in space, congratulations. You've done a great job, and hopefully you will move forward and stay in this lane and keep bringing us good qualitative music as you have. She also seems to be more happy when she's in relationships. She's dating Little Meech, from BMF, the main character from the BMF series on Stars, and she seems to be happier when she's in a good relationship. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying that it seems that that's what makes her feel comfortable. But Clear 2, the EP, Summer Walker, worth it. Especially if you're doing events and say you're having company over, you're driving to the beach or just taking a nice drive. It's a very good project. And the next one is a classic artist who is he's on skates right now. The last time this happened with me, I remember this is when Jay-Z was making albums back to back to back, and it just seemed that it didn't matter what was happening. It's just his headspace and his creative space and his artistic space was very much in sync. He was just making good album after good album after good album. And the same can be said for Nasir Jones, who dropped Magic 2. Him and Hit Boy got together again. This one's more of a little bit of a graduated EP. But just very, when I listened to the album, I said to myself, he's been around for 30 years now. But I wonder if I heard this for the first time, what would I say? And I said, if I heard this for the first time, I would say, who is this guy? He needs to be signed to a deal because he is good. He is good. That's how timeless Nasir Jones's flow and lyrical game is. He speaks a little bit older now because he is. So he says some things that will let you know that he is not a younger rapper. But each song is good. There's great samples. He has homage to BDP and Eric B. and Rakim. There's a Marvin Gaye sample in there somewhere. And if you look very carefully, you'll find Curtis Jackson on this album. Queens and Queens. 50 Cent is on this album. And the record is very much just well done because they're both artists that know what to do when they get in the studio and get together. So Magic 2, which is another EP by Nasir Jones, very, very well done, worth the purchase. So 3 albums, Koi for Coi Leray, Magic 2 by Nasir Jones, Nas, and Clear 2, Summer Walker, EP. All 3 will not disappoint. So for those who like to complain about what the music isn't good and there isn't anything out there, there are 3 things you can go get right now that will fill the void. Well done. Sidebar. I vented on a past podcast about Daniel Jones's Daniel Caesar. Daniel Jones is the quarterback of the New York Giants. Football season's coming. See what my head is. Daniel Caesar, okay, has an album that just came out that's bad. Okay, it's bad. And I said very carefully, I said, one of the mistakes is that where's the duets? Because one thing that he does very, very well is he does duets very well. Well, they just released a remix of one of the songs, which I cannot remember. It'll hit me later. And it has him and Summer Walker, and that record is now starting to chart. Because they're doing now what they should have done from the beginning. Here's the problem. Too late. This generation's moved on. And Daniel Caesar is one project away from being on the Who Cares list, when he was one album away from being a mainstream R&B staple. So I hope his team is paying close attention. The song is in my head right now. Always is the song. Him and Summer Walker's a duet. On the album, it's him by himself. They did a remix with him and Summer Walker, and it's good. It's fine. It's not spectacular. It's not like Get You. Get You is spectacular. But it's fine. And we'll see what happens. But I think it's a little bit too late. And I'm pretty sure this project, from a financial standpoint, from a label standpoint, is very much like, a little bit upside down. So we'll see. That's my last word on the music side. Next sidebar. Before we go to the V. Before we get there, writer strike. Now it's an actor strike, which means it's going to be a content strike. Because there will not be a lot of original content coming out. And the reason why it's significant is because the new shows come out in the fall and we're in the summer. So this is going to be a problem. Okay, what we have right now, like for those that watch shows and on TV right now, they're pretty much done it in the can. But after that, it's gonna be the wild, wild west, and we're gonna get some good visual content on TV. We'll see what happens there. I'm just kind of saying that now. That's already being spoken about ad infinitum by other podcasts. But I'm just saying, just pay attention to what happens, because the last time that we had a major writer's strike, that's when reality TV took off and went to the moon, because they didn't have to pay actors who were part of the Writers Guild or the Screen Actors Guild. So we'll see what happens here with that, and we'll take it from there. But just something to keep your eye on, Goju Nation. All right, what content comes out from that situation? Okay, so that's the Q. The Q. I spoke to a few albums, and now we're at the V. The V. The V. What's verified? What is very verified, and this is something else that's been very much apparent to me with people I've been around and as I've been doing my travels, is how different realities are different for different people, and how much we care or don't care depending upon how their reality speaks to us. Okay. All right, let's get into a few examples. Okay. I'll start with me first. Okay. Over the past few years, I've had probably some significant life changes that I did not expect to happen. Or I thought that they would go in lane A and end up going into lane Z as far as the end result of those things that have happened. And as the fire truck or police drive by. And it has affected me in a way where my friends say, "Are you okay?" And my honest answer is, "No, I'm not okay," because lane A turned to lane Z, and that's my reality. And within my reality, I see things a certain way. So, because of what has impacted me, I may look at sports a certain way. I may look at women a certain way. I may look at finance a certain way because of what has affected me. Now, here's the issue with that. The issue with that is that other people may not see it the same way because it's not their reality. So, for example, if I'm going through a rough financial time and I'm dealing with finance a certain way, a person that's not going through financial issues at that point in time will see it a different way. And they may say, well, let's just do this, or we can do that, or this is being done, where I, in this hypothetical situation, may say, can't do that, don't have it. And then we have different realities of how we deal with things because of such. Now, I gave you a simple direction because I want to go into something a little bit deeper with this on the verify side. Okay, these are people in my life. I'm not gonna say their names, and they might actually recognize these situations. And it's not intended. I repeat, it's not intended to upset or offend. It's intended to inform. I have a female friend, very, very, very smart African American woman who has grown up underneath strong African American women. And she has not had the male relationship in her life on a significant level. I'm not saying there has been no men in her life. I'm just saying that she hasn't had, like, for example, she didn't grow up in a mother and father married for 50 years home with both parents there. And the result has been is that she has learned to be very strong independently as a woman for herself. She deals with things on her own, and she's always had to deal with things on her own. And because of the other strong women in her life, there is a lineage that speaks to be the strong woman for yourself. I'm not saying don't depend on the man and men ain't crap. I'm not going there. I'm just saying that she has learned to be good on her own and deal with things on her own. She is now married and been married for a nice amount of time. And one of the issues that we have addressed, which is, it's not a big deal, is her being able to receive help from her partner and just work with that. And that is something that, because she has been so accustomed to dealing with things on her own, it's a hard adjustment for her. That's her reality. Whereas the person who she's with, her partner, is saying, we can do this together. It shouldn't be a problem. And she has a very visceral reaction to when that happens because of what has happened in her past. That's her reality. Now, she'll work it out because her and her partner have been together for a nice amount of time. But it just speaks to a reality that, for example, another woman or some of her other friends who have grown up with that dynamic in the home when they were young, both parents on a consistent basis, see things differently, and their conversations become a little bit different because of that dynamic. So that's one reality. Strong female woman had to grow up amongst other strong female women because there was no real strong male factor in the household to give that dynamic to balance things out, or an alternate dynamic to work things through. The next one is a male friend of mine who has basically had new revelations in his life and has changed his life directly. Okay, there were almost like he won the lottery after having no money. Okay, and what has happened is that he now sees things differently because of an abrupt new reality in his life from a family standpoint, and now that is literally his living being, and all he discusses is what that dynamic is and how it affects him, to the point where it's almost as if nothing else exists. Because he and I have conversations, and each conversation that we have, it tends to lean towards, yes, this is what I am talking about, but it goes back to what he is dealing with because it's such of a significant impact in his life. And he's learning from it because it's almost like he's having a crash course, okay, in life, that something that would take normally 25 years of your life to kind of work through, he's now having a crash course doing it in 2 years, okay, in 3 years. And it's affecting him, okay, in a way that, as I'm observing, I'm trying to be the best version of a friend I can to the circumstance, but it can be challenging when that dynamic becomes consistent. And that's his reality because of what landed in his life. It's not my reality because I haven't had that land in my life. So the conversations now become unique in how we go back and forth. Now, why am I bringing these three things up? Because culture needs to be more unified and not divisive. And when things like this happen in life, and the way that society is drilled for economic growth, divisiveness is what motivates commerce. And the more divisive we are, the more commerce can be garnered. So we need Nike to be against Adidas. We need the Mets to be against the Yankees. We need debates in hip hop about who the best rapper is. We need debates in rock and roll about who the best guitarist is. Because if we have that conversation about who the best guitarist is, we're speaking about different groups. We're speaking about different groups. We're speaking about different songs. We're speaking about different songs. We're speaking about different interests. We're speaking about different interests. We're purchasing those interests. See how simple that is? But what I need our culture to do is be more embracive of these different realities and be more embracive of caring about the difference in realities. Not saying that you need to change the way that you are or change the way you deal with people, but deal with situations with a better sense of empathy. Stop being so absolute in how you feel because of how you've been affected. Recognize that everybody has been affected by different things, different ways. So it's not your place to say, well, I just don't deal with things like that, or that's just not how I am, or that's not what it is. No, that's not true. Because as I told a female friend of mine who we was talking on the phone a couple of days ago, we were talking about astrology, and we was talking about how signs are, and I said, well, no, signs aren't all the same because of different circumstances or different realities. She said, what do you mean? I said, well, you could be born on July 20th, 1982, and it could be four people born on the same day. They could be completely different. She was like, well, what do you mean? I said, well, how about one of them grows up in a one-parent household instead of a two-parent household? How about one person is born in Zimbabwe and the other person is born in Iowa? How about one person, by the time they're 20, has two kids and the other person can't have kids? So those are life circumstances, and those circumstances affect your personality as well. So just because you may have similar circumstances doesn't mean you're similar people. Just like if you have different realities, don't mean you have to be different people. So I'm wrapping up the V by saying that we need to be more embracive, more empathetic, and take our blinders and widen them a little bit when dealing with each other, understanding that different realities doesn't mean we have to be different people and have absolute opinions and judgment based upon such. Be a good person by being an embracive, empathetic person of what they may have gone through so they could be the same for you. And then we can get someplace and move forward as individuals and as a culture. That's the V. Left turn, right? Left turn. All right, so here's an inverted left turn if you know how to drive in school, okay? And the C, and the C, and the C, and the C, okay? This is what is certified. This is what is certified. And I also dealt with this in depth this summer, and this is why I'm here. I'm calling this cultural disengagement. I'm going to start here with a couple of circumstances and then get to my points. When 9/11 happened, that's over 20 years ago now. But it happened in 2001, if I remember correctly. Well, in 2003, we didn't know how we felt about 9/11 because we were still living in the shadow of the effects it happened on our culture and on our world in totality. Now that we're 20 years out, we can speak about that with clarity because we have a lot of intel, a lot of information, and to be perfectly honest, if you individually was involved or around that situation, you've had time to emotionally and mentally process what has happened. It may have taken a short amount of time or it may have taken this amount of time, but you definitely can say now, I know how I feel about what happened on 9/11 because we're years out. We haven't gotten there with COVID yet. COVID is our pandemic. Every generation has gone through some form of pandemic, or every 100 years, 50 years, whatever. I'll let the pundits speak about that. But we go through a major situation like that. We're still a few years out from that. COVID wasn't 20 years ago. COVID was 3 years ago. 2019, 2020? Yeah, 2020. So we're still working through the hardcore effects of what that's done to our generation, our culture, and our world. But here's what I do know. I do know that based upon remote working, which is a result of COVID, hybrid working, I know that emotional heightenedness is definitely a effect of COVID. I also know that relationships that were good are fantastic. Oh no, let me say it differently. I also know that the reality of relationships has revealed itself through COVID because of survival. So if somebody really rocked with you, you found out who they were. If somebody had evil intentions or weren't genuine, you found that out too. You have new friends that are probably going to be your lifelong friends, and you have old friends that are no longer your friends, all due to the effect of what COVID has effectively done. Reason why I'm bringing that up is because here is the C. And this is and I'll give an example of each one I've dealt with. The C is cultural disengagement. We're now even more on some BS when we thought we actually were going to bring ourselves closer together post COVID. Because we now are dealing with our own internal survival mechanism because of what we were exposed to. Seeing them streets empty, okay, people passing away that were here today, going tomorrow. if you caught COVID and had the hallucinations or the serious cough or the cough that wouldn't go away, if you had the second and third time, this is now affecting you in a way where your survival gene is peaked in a way that has never been peaked before, and you are subconsciously in that mode of making sure that you are okay, and you're almost not even caring about what's happening to the left and right of you if it's not your family or your loved ones or your children because of what's going on. I've had conversations where people have asked me questions, and they've said, "I'll give it a great example." They've asked me, Tally, how do you get involved in X, Y, and Z? And I will say, you need to do this, this, and this. 1, 2, and 3. And then they'll say, well, why can't you just tell me how to do it? And I said, because you have to do X, Y, and Z. It says, well, I don't understand why you just can't tell me why it is, because if it's so important, you should just share it with me. I said, because you have to do X, Y, and Z. I've said the same thing to them the same time, 3 different ways. And it got to a point where I got frustrated where I says, I don't think this person is hearing me. I think this person just wants what they want, although I'm giving them the answer. So it's like being in school and it's a math equation where you see it and you say, well, what's the answer? And the teacher says, well, you have to do this, this, and this to get to the answer. And the reason why the teacher does that is because you have a better appreciation, a better understanding. Your brain is being trained to activate and think and work a certain way so that when you arrive at the answer, there is a satisfaction of individual growth that lets you know your brain can now work in additional ways. I think as we become adults, we don't want our brains to work additional ways. We just want what we want. What I just described is called circular questioning, repetitive questioning. And it can be a result of forgetfulness, confusion, or lack of satisfaction with the initial response. And it's coined by when you're having a conversation and the person repeatedly says, but what I'm saying is, but here's what I want you to understand. Rather than them effectively listening to the response to get the answer. Culturally, that disengagement is holding us back from moving forward. I am saying this out loud to those who know me and to those that can hear this. I am refusing, moving forward, to deal with circular questioning. You give me an answer, I will ask for some more clarity so I can understand the answer, but I will not be dismissive of your answer. If you are asking me a question and saying, what time does the podcast come on? I say 1 p.m. And you ask me 3 more times about when the podcast is coming on, I am not answering you after question number 2. That is what I'm not doing. Circular questioning. Second thing that goes into cultural disengagement is with another individual who I will always be close with, no matter what happens. We can have 5 conversations in 2 weeks' time, and he will repeat one part of our conversation each time in the conversation, as if the story was never told initially. That is also amazingly frustrating. You're going to discover a new person in my life, and I'm going to say his name today, and you'll see it moving forward. And I'll start here. I asked Telly what that is called. What is that psychologically referred to? And Telly gave me a magnificent answer. Okay? It's called preservation. Now, when I saw this, I didn't like it because I was like, that's not really a good answer. But Telly gave me even more details on it. Okay? It refers to the tendency to repeat a particular behavior, thought, or verbal response despite being presented with new information or situations. So that speaks to not recognizing that you need to take this information or situation and move forward and grow from it. You rather live and sit within this situation because it's a comfort zone for you. This is what happens with our culture. I like to talk a lot and tell a lot of stories and not be activated to do things to move forward. So you speak about, for argument's sake, what happens at work, and you complain about your boss, and you complain about your boss pretty much as you can, as long as you can, but you're not taking the steps to say, I need to leave this job. It's you being in a relationship with somebody and complaining about the person's shortcomings and how it doesn't work for you, or how the dynamic is not compatible, but yet you don't leave the relationship. It's having children in your life and the child has a behavior pattern that, while they're children, can be mitigated, worked on, or at least examined and explored, but yet you rather just complain about what's happening with your child rather than acting what you need to do with your child. Second thing, I am no longer going to subscribe to: emotional and mental preservation in my circle that does not want to move forward with what's happening within their circle. No longer subscribing to that. And I say to Goju Nation, you should not subscribe to that as well too. You've heard me say this a few times. Reciprocal and resourceful. That's what makes a relationship. And preservation of having the same conversation repetitively is not resourceful. Before I go into the third aspect of what's going on in the cultural disengagement, I'm saying this again as a full-blown disclaimer. If what you have heard somehow affects you, it is not my intent to upset you. It is my intent to hold up a respective mirror and say, let's be better and let's be different. And it's also me on my platform expressing how I feel, my platform, my experiences. It's not anybody else's. We'll not be having conversations about this offline. It is what it is. Let's finish up the C. You ever have a conversation, and let's say we'll talk. Let's do the LeBron, Michael Jordan, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Put in who you want to put in. Who's the best basketball player of all time? Tom Brady, Lawrence Taylor, Jerry Rice, whatever. Who's the best football player of all time? Ichiro and his exploits, because we're seeing it, compared to Babe Ruth, compared to Barry Bonds, compared to Babe Ruth, compared to whomever, who the best baseball player is of all time. We've all had these conversations amongst men. Women, what's the best TV show? Is it Grey's Anatomy compared to Sex and the City? Fill in the blanks. And what happens is you have these conversations and you're going back and forth about the details of each one of these situations. Who the actors are, what the players are, what their stats, how somebody dresses in a TV show, their character traits, Game of Thrones, The Wire, Sopranos, whatever the case may be. Okay, and as you're having the conversation, and I'll land the plane here. Let's talk about, say, what the best the best HBO TV show is of all time, because HBO started the trend of great dramatic television that wasn't on ABC or CBS. So HBO has had Game of Thrones, HBO has had The Wire, HBO has had Sex and the City, HBO has had Curb Your Enthusiasm, all these types of shows. So what's the best one? Where you talk about, well, Larry David with Curb Your Enthusiasm and the mafia aspect and Tony Soprano. And what happens is you go back and forth and you're explaining what these details are. And I may say The Wire is the best show on HBO. Well, you may say The Sopranos is the best show on HBO. And now we're going back and forth about how, Well, the crime element in The Wire was more realistic, where the mafia aspect was, was a little bit construed and made up, although it was good writing. Boardwalk Empire was a good show too. And then I'm sitting back and saying, yeah, but I like the character actors, with the Sopranos, because, for example, you can go to a Halloween party as a Sopranos actor, people know who you are. You go as The Wire, they won't really know who you are. So anyway, you go back and forth with what you think is the better show, and it doesn't matter what anybody says. It's just what you feel. It's your interpretation. So what that's called is confirmation bias. And I spoke to Telly about this too. Okay? And Telly told me that it's the tendency to favor or interpret information in a way that confirms one pre-existing beliefs or hypotheses, while disregarding or downplaying information that may even contradict it. That's how you get into these sports debates. The bias can lead to individuals seeking out and selectively interpreting evidence that supports their point of view, even if it's been disproven. So I'll flip the sports now. So we'll sit back and say, is LeBron better than Michael Jordan? Well, somebody will sit back and say, well, Michael Jordan has never lost the NBA final, and LeBron James has, which is fact. But yet the person says, yeah, but LeBron's the greatest scorer of all time. Although their point was disproven, they still don't care. They're still saying what they want to say. That's why barbershop talk is so entertaining. But here's my problem and why it becomes cultural disengagement. These conversations, I would love for them to be healthy, but they end up becoming so divisive or so antagonistic and so confrontational, okay, that it disrupts the dynamic of just saying we like different things and it's okay. You like blue sneakers, I like green sneakers. It's okay. And we want to debate it as if the person has to take on the other person's opinion. That is not fair. That is not realistic. And that is not healthy. We can agree to disagree. And we can simply say, that's how I feel, and that's how you feel. I had a person ask me about one of my favorite artists and what their favorite record was. And I told them what my favorite record was. And the person said, really? You don't like this record that does this, and this? And I mentioned the same record again. He says, I don't understand that. You should really like this record. I said, I should really like this record? So you asked, A-S-K-E-D, asked me, hope I'm saying that properly, what my favorite record is. You asked my opinion. I told you. But yet you don't like that answer? Or you want to disprove the answer? But it's what I like? Cultural disengagement. I am no longer engaging in confirmation bias. You like what you like, I like what I like. You like to go to bed early, I like to go to bed late. You like to get up early, I like to watch the news in the morning. It just makes us individuals. That's all it does. And I'm not engaging in confirmation bias for the sake of intense conversation that should be casual. We just get along conversation. And let's move some things forward within that. Those are my 3 examples for cultural bias. The C. And I'm going to end this podcast on this note. The reason why I'm bringing these things up is because it's becoming harder for us to stay united. We're becoming more divisive as a culture and as individuals. And I'm just pointing out a few things that speak to that in a way that we should know and understand. It's not a criticism of anybody individually. It's not a criticism of anybody in a group setting. It's a criticism of how we're engaging with each other. I'm bringing up that maybe some things that have happened in our worlds to cause us to be this way and how we could be better. I know we can. Go Jew Nation. You know where you can find me, at Gotham Jungle. Podcast will be expanding. We'll be on more platforms. Season 3 videos will coming up. I got something cute for you. I mentioned a name today that you're going to keep hearing about. The name is Telly. You'll find out more about that as we move forward. And remember, Gotham Jungle. Remember, Goju Nation. Light and darkness cannot coexist at the same time. So if you choose to be one, choose to be the light. Goju Nation. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.